Hello students, so in this video we're going to go over the table of drugs and chemicals part of the Encoder Pro and how to look for these codes. So we're going to jump right into that. On number 1, this patient had an adverse reaction to measles virus vaccine. This is their initial encounter. So with number 1, we don't know what kind of reaction, whether it was a rash, a seizure, convulsions. We don't have any of that information. So we're just going to code with the information that we have available. So this person had a reaction to the measles vaccine. So using our Encoder Pro, we are going to focus on the table and drugs. So hovering over the coding section here, if we come down to the index part of it, you'll see the table of drugs and chemicals here. So I'm going to click on that. And we know that it was a vaccine. Okay, so I'm going to go to the vaccine portion of it. And then here is the measles vaccine. So I'm going to click on that to see what information is also located underneath that. And our question didn't say anything with mumps or rubella, so I'm not going to mess with that. So it was a vaccine, so it wasn't an accident, it wasn't intentional, it wasn't an assault, it was an adverse reaction to the vaccine that this patient had. So I'm going to click on this, and you need to go beyond this. You can't just code this because it will be incorrect, and in a minute you'll see why. So if I click on that, here is the code T50.B95, but look at this. This is flagging you, saying that it requires a 7th character in order for it to be a billable code. So we need to select a 5th character out of the options. So this is where your encounters are going to come to play. So because this is the initial encounter, our correct code is T50.B95A. So let's say you don't code the A. You will not receive credit for this answer because, again, the insurance will not honor it and kick it back, and you'll have to fix it. So we won't give you partial credit if you leave out the A. So super important to click on the code and get to this screen here, so that way you can code whether it's an initial encounter or not. So this would be the correct code for number 1. So it's going to be T50.B95A. That's the correct answer. Okay, number 2, seizure caused by interaction between cocaine and alcohol beverage, accident, initial encounter, without status of epilepsy. So the first thing we're going to code is we're going to code the drugs that were involved. So we're going to code the cocaine first. Okay, so I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to come back to our search engine here of the table of drugs and chemicals, and I'm going to search for cocaine. Give it a minute. This is the result that pops up, and it wasn't an anesthetic. It was recreational, so it was an accident. We know that from the information on our worksheet. So the correct code is T40.5X1. Again, we have to remember, click on the code. And again, it's telling us that it's requiring a 7th character. And this is where the initial encounter comes into play. So the correct answer for number 2, part of the number 2, is T40.5X1A. And I'm going to add that to our okay, so our next drug that we're going to code on number 2 is going to be the alcohol. And paste that there. And we see here alcohol. Okay, and then right underneath alcohol, and under abuse, because they were abusing alcohol, there's beverage right there. And it was accidental, T51.0x1. We click on that. And again, it's telling us 7th character because of the encounter. So T51.0x1A is our second code. Okay, so we've coded cocaine and we've coded the alcohol. But what we haven't coded is the reaction they had. So they had a seizure because of this this mixing of the two. So we're gonna copy seizure. Now on seizure, we're not gonna find it under the table of drugs and chemicals. So we have to, I'm gonna click home here. We have to go back to our index and then do the index to disease and injuries. Okay, so I'm gonna click on that. Okay, so here's seizures. And we don't know anything other than seizures. We have no other specification of what type of seizures. So I'm going to click on the R56.9. I know it's saying see also convulsions, but our question doesn't say anything, whether they're convulsions, whether it's epilepsy. We don't have any of that information. So I'm just going to code what we see. So R56.9 is saying R56.5, I'm sorry, R56.9, unspecified convulsions, seizures, convulsions. So they're both characterized by this code, R56.9. So that is the code that we're going to use for number 2. So this particular question had 3 codes. The last one was R56.9 for the seizures. So we coded the cocaine, we coded the alcohol, and we coded the seizures. So this one had 3. So you do need all 3 codes in order for you to get credit for questions similar to this one. Okay, so number 3, toxic liver disease with hepatic necrosis with coma due to overdose of acetaminophen, suicide attempt. Okay, so we're going to code the drug first, and we're needing to go back to our table of drugs and chemicals to find that code. Acetaminophen, search. Okay, and here it is, acetaminophen. And now this one was a suicide attempt, so it was intentional. So it's T3 9.1x2. Okay, so we're going to click on that. It's flagging us on this code. We're needing to code what type of encounter, and our question says it's the subsequent encounter. So it would be T39.1x2D. That would be the correct answer for part of the correct answer for number 3. 1x2 and D for the subsequent visit. And then now we have to code the toxic liver disease with hepatic necrosis with coma. How do we break that down? So they developed liver disease. Everything else falls or further explains what type of liver disease this patient has because of the reaction of the medication that they took. So we're going to do disease and then go to our coding index and then index to disease and injuries, and then do disease, toxic liver, so we're going to find liver. Okay, liver. So it was toxic liver disease. So after liver, we're going to look for toxic, and here's toxic. Okay, with hepatic necrosis. There's our hepatic necrosis. Now look at this little drop down option, and here's with coma. So K7111 is the correct code. So we're going to click on K7111, and we don't find any additional recommendations. So this would be our correct code. K71.11 for the toxic liver disease with hepatic necrosis with coma due to overdose of acetaminophen. Okay? Number 4, high blood pressure without diagnosis of hypertension due to prescribed venlafaxine initial encounter. So first we're going to look up drug. So I'm going to copy that, put in our drug, search. So it was a prescription. It was an adverse effect. So T43215. It looks like that's our code. And so again here we're flagged. We need to code the encounter. And so this one's saying it's the subsequent encounter. So this would be our code here. T43.125D. So I'm gonna alright. So now we have to code the high blood pressure without diagnosis of hypertension. So high blood pressure, so that would be elevated. Okay? Elevated blood pressure, and notice this is saying C hypertension, but we don't have hypertension. It was just an elevated high blood pressure that was the result of a blood or medication that we took. So they had a reading and no diagnosis of hypertension. So we're going to click on that and see what we get. So abnormal, so this is saying we need a 4th character, and this is saying elevated blood pressure reading without diagnosis of hypertension. So this looks like it's going to be our code. So for the second one is 0.0. Alright. Number 5, rash due to prescribed sulfamethoxazole and trimethoprim. So the first drug we're going to look up is sulfamethoxazole. We're going to copy it, paste our drug there, and here is the trimethoprim. So we're needing to click that. It was prescribed, so it was an adverse reaction. So we're going to click on T36.8X5, and again it's flagging us. We need to code the encounter, and this one's saying it's the initial encounter. So T36.8X5A will be the correct code that we're going to use on number 5. Okay. And now we need to code the rash. And then index to disease and injuries. I'm going to do rash. Okay, so it was a rash due to a drug. Okay. And it doesn't say anything contact. Our question doesn't say any of that, so I'm just going to use the L27.0 and see what comes up. Okay, it says generalized skin eruption due to drugs and medicaments taken internally. So in addition to L27.0, that's giving us the correct code there, it's also giving us a reminder: use additional code for adverse effect if applicable to identify drugs. So we've already done this with the T36.8X5A. We've already done it, but notice that you do get a little heads up there that if you're using this code, you have to use an additional code with it. So L27.0 will be the last code for number 5L.